So the next thing we need to do after we've got all of our planets moving and we see them rotating around, making sure all of them come back, is we need to add in a button. So hopefully you remember how to do this, but if not, what we're going to do here is we're going to go to Insert, New Object, Interface, Button. And then we're just going to place the button somewhere up here for right now. So we want to rename it. So our button, we want to rename to Reset. So put a dash instead of an underscore. Let me fix that. All right. We also want to change the text inside here, so I'm going to double click and we're going to make it say reset. All right, so we want to place this so it's actually centered, and the width of this is 800. So half of it would be 400 right here somewhere in the middle. And then this is a width of, let's look, 64 pixels. So if we did 400 minus 32, that would be 368. So that should be our X position. That's going to make it so we have it nice and centered. And we're going to move it up. So we're going to get it really close to the top. So there we go. I put it at 10. So that should be our placement of our button. All right, so the next thing that we want to do here is add a counter object. So we want to keep track of our revolutions. So to do that, we're going to go up here and create a new object. Go to all objects, and we're going to look for a counter, which is right here. So we're going to hit OK. And let's place it outside because it is a dark color, so it might be hard to see if we place it down here right now. We'll have to change our colors at some point. All right, so let's rename this to days, or counter days. And I guess the instructions said days counter, but I like counter days because we can put in like button first with all of them. All right, and then we're going to want to change the size of it. Oops. Let me select it again. There we go. All right, so let's make the size of it a little bit bigger. So let's do a width of 40 and a height of 60. All right. Why is that a 4 dash? Looks weird. All right, 4 0. Delete. There we go. That looks better. So there is little contrast between the numbers in our counter days and the background, so we're going to have to deal with that. So we're going to open our image editor. We're just going to double click on it. All right. So now we're going to try to change some colors here. So what we want to do is, we got fill. We're going to change the color. We're going to change this tolerance up to 3. That'll just allow some of the stuff that's a little not quite all the way black to still be selected when we change the colors. So pick a color, fill each frame. So I'm going to zoom in a little, make it easier. I'm going to stick with my orange. All right, then we can hit OK. So now we're going to place this at, what, 870. So I'm going to change its position. I'm going to say it's at 870. Now it's nice and neat. It's easy to read. It's up in the corner. It looks good. So remember that if we clone an object, that means we're just making an exact copy of an already existing object, but it does not inherit the properties from the original. So that's the difference between copy and clone. So we can clone the counter days object, and it has all the different features like the sizing and everything, but it allows us to program it differently. So you guessed it, we're going to right click and we're going to go down and find clone. We're going to clone this guy. So we want to create 2 rows and 1 column, which we have already set up, and a spacing of 5 between each row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so now let's hit OK. Boom. There we go. Now we've placed our clone below the original with 5 pixels between them. Beautiful. So let's rename this guy now. So we got to rename this because it's not about counters. What we're going to call this one, I'm sorry, what we're going to call this one, stopwatch. All right, and we're going to do the same thing now with our reset button. So we're going to clone it. And we want the same thing. We want to put this guy 5 pixels below this button. So I hit OK. And now this one's going to be our button for time. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to change the wording to time. Then I'm going to come over here to our button reset to and rename it. Oops. Right click, rename. And we're going to call it button time. Before we start programming our buttons conditions, we really don't need these. These are just for us to test. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete these. So to delete them, you come over here, you make sure you're on the number, not in here, on the number, and you're just going to right click and do delete. Then you're going to repeat this for all the other ones. So we need to create a new condition, so we can right click, click, and we're going to go to the timer option. We're going to right click on the timer. We're going to select every. All right. So we want to make sure we've got 0 for hours, minutes, and seconds. So we're going to make that all 0. And then in the 100th of a second, we're going to put a 10. We're going to hit OK. So this condition is saying that if every 10/100ths of a second is created. All right, so 10/100ths is obviously the same as 1/10 of a second. All right, so now we're going to come over here and we're going to look for our days counter right here. So we're going to right click here and we're going to click add to counter. Now we've got our expression editor. So we're going to put 1.52 here. All right. So we can see that it's going to add 1.52 days to our counter. All right. So let's go back to our frame editor. We're going to select the inner planets. All right, and then we're going to look at our runtime options. So we want to change the movement timer property to 50. So if you remember, we set the frame rate to 50, so that way it matches up. We did that back in lesson 2. All right, cool. So now let's just run it and see what we got going on. So we can see the counters counting up. Hopefully after 365 days, we'll see the Earth looking like it's about in the same spot. Let's make sure. Getting close. Hopefully we'll see it soon. There it is. Earth made it back. Awesome.